A massive winter storm just slammed into 17 states across the American West and Northern Plains. And right now, as you watch this, it is still moving. Roads have vanished under walls of white. Entire highways have been shut down for days. Wind strong enough to rattle windows and knock grown men off their feet has torn through mountain passes and prairie towns alike. And on one mountain in the Sierra Nevada, this storm did something that has not happened in this country in 45 years. Stay with me for the next several minutes, because what you're about to hear is not just about what this storm has already done. It is about where it is going next. It is about which states are in its path right now. And it is about the second storm that meteorologists are watching build off the East Coast. A storm that could hit millions of people who have not seen a single flake yet this winter. This video covers the full story, what happened, who it affected, and what is still coming. This is the full story, the one that connects what happened on a mountain most people have never heard of to the blizzard warning still active across the northern plains. The one that walks you through who was hit, what they experienced, and what comes next. And if you live anywhere in the path of this storm, or if someone you love does, you need to hear every word of what comes next. By the time this storm is done, it may reach states that have not seen winter weather like this in years. More than a dozen communities are still cut off. Rescue teams are still working in conditions so dangerous that even trained professionals are being told to stay off the mountains. And one family, one group of people who went into the backcountry on a Tuesday morning, never came home. Hit the like button right now and subscribe so you never miss a real-time update like this, because the next part of this story is unfolding while you watch. And drop a comment below telling me what state you're in, because by the end of this video you are going to want to know if you are in this storm's path. You're going to want to know what happened on that mountain, and you're going to want to know what to do if this storm, or the second one building behind it, is heading your way. This storm made landfall on the west coast less than a week ago. It buried mountain ranges under snow so deep that ski resorts, places built to handle winter, had to close their doors. It shut down highways that carry thousands of people every single day. It knocked out power to rural communities that depend on those lines to stay warm, to stay connected, to stay alive. And then it kept moving. The National Weather Service issued blizzard warnings across states that stretch from the Pacific Ocean to the Great Lakes. Not winter weather advisories, not snow alerts, blizzard warnings, the kind that mean conditions are so dangerous that anyone who does not absolutely have to be outside should not be. The kind that mean visibility drops so low you cannot see the road in front of you. The kind that mean even emergency responders have to think twice before heading out. And while all of that was happening, while highways were disappearing and towns were losing power and families were hunkering down to wait it out, something far worse was building on one mountain in California. The slope above them had been loaded with more snow than it could support, and the group had no way of knowing how quickly conditions had changed. We are going to walk through this entire story together. You're going to hear what this storm did in every region it touched. You're going to hear what happened on that mountain, the full story, the confirmed details, and what we know about the people who were lost and the ones who survived. You're going to hear where this storm is right now and which states are being told to prepare. You're going to hear about the second storm forming off the Atlantic coast, the nor'easter that could turn this into a coast-to-coast weather event, and you're going to hear exactly what you should do if any of this is heading toward you. Because this goes beyond a standard weather report. This is a story about a storm that is still moving, a story about people who went into the mountains and never came back, a story about communities that are still digging out, and a story about the next wave, the one that has not hit yet but is already being tracked by every weather center from California to Maine. So let me take you back to where this all started. Let me show you what this storm looked like when it first made landfall. Let me show you what it did to the West Coast, and what it's still doing right now as it rolls east across the country. This storm moved ashore on the Northern California coast quickly and with unusual force. It was not the kind of winter weather that builds slowly over a weekend and gives people time to prepare. It was fast, it was heavy, and it hit harder and faster than most people in the region had experienced in recent years. Within hours of landfall, the Sierra Nevada mountain range was buried. Snow fell so fast that plows could not keep up. Highways that run through the mountains, roads that thousands of people use to get to work, to get home, to get supplies, were shut down completely. Not because of ice, not because of a few inches of powder, but because the snow was coming down so hard and so fast that the road itself simply disappeared. Drivers who were already on those highways when the storm hit had no choice but to pull over and wait. Some of them waited for hours, some of them waited all night. The wind was the other part of the story. On the exposed ridgelines above the tree line, wind gusts hit speeds that are normally only seen during hurricanes. Strong enough to knock a person off their feet. Strong enough to flip a vehicle if it caught the side panel at the wrong angle. Strong enough to turn falling snow into a wall of white that made it impossible to see more than a few feet in any direction. That kind of wind does not just make travel dangerous. It makes standing outside impossible, and this was not limited to the mountains. Down in the valleys, in the small towns that sit in the shadow of the Sierra Nevada, people woke up to a world that had changed overnight. Power lines were down, trees that had stood for decades were snapped in half. Roads that had been clear the night before were buried under drifts taller than a grown man, and the snow kept falling. The National Weather Service issued warnings that covered not just California, but Nevada as well. The storm did not stop at the state line. It rolled east into the high desert and kept going. Communities that do not see heavy snow very often, places where people do not always have snow tires or chains or the kind of equipment you need to dig yourself out, were hit just as hard as the mountain towns that deal with this every winter. Lake Tahoe, one of the most famous winter destinations in the country, was effectively cut off. The highways that lead into the basin were closed. Ski resorts that normally stay open no matter what had to shut down operations because the conditions were too dangerous even for people who spend their lives working in the snow. Guests who had come for a weekend getaway found themselves stuck in hotels with no way to leave. Local residents who'd lived through dozens of winter storms said this one felt different. More intense and faster moving than most storms they had seen in recent memory. And then the storm kept moving. It did not lose strength as it crossed into Nevada. It did not slow down as it climbed over the mountain passes. It kept moving east, and every state in its path faced significant winter conditions. Utah was next. The Wasatch Range, which runs along the eastern edge of the Salt Lake Valley, was hammered. Avalanche warnings went up across the backcountry zones, warnings that told anyone thinking about heading into the mountains to stay home. The snow was falling too fast, the wind was loading the slopes too heavily, the conditions were unstable, and if you went out anyway you were taking your life into your hands. Colorado saw the same thing. The Rockies, which stretch across the entire western half of the state, were buried under fresh snow that piled up so fast it did not have time to settle. Ski patrols at the resort spent the day throwing explosives onto the slopes to trigger controlled avalanches, trying to release the snow before it came down on its own. The backcountry access gates, the ones that let experienced skiers and snowboarders leave the resort boundaries and head into the wilderness, were locked shut. No exceptions. There were no waivers. The conditions were simply too dangerous. And the storm was not done. It kept rolling north and east, Montana, South Dakota, and Minnesota, states that know winter, states that are built for snow, were hit with blizzard warnings that stretched across entire regions. Not just snow, blizzards. That word means something specific. It means snow heavy enough that you cannot see, wind strong enough that you cannot stand, cold deep enough that being outside for more than a few minutes without the right gear can be life-threatening. In Montana, ranchers who make their living in the open country were told to bring their livestock in and stay inside. Highways that crossed the plains were shut down because even with plows running constantly, the snow was coming down faster than they could clear it. Small towns that sit hours away from the nearest city stocked up on supplies and hunkered down, knowing that if the power went out or the road stayed closed, help was not coming anytime soon. South Dakota saw the same thing. Whiteout conditions across the highways, schools closed, businesses shut down. People who had lived their entire lives in snow country looked out their windows and decided this was not a storm to mess with. This was the kind of storm where you stay home, you check your supplies, you make sure your neighbours are okay, and you wait it out. Minnesota, which sits at the eastern edge of the storm's path, was slammed with snow and wind that shut down travel across the northern half of the state. The Twin Cities, which are used to winter and know how to handle it, saw flights cancelled and roads closed as the storm rolled through. In the rural areas north of the cities, where towns are smaller and farther apart, people were cut off from each other for days. This was not one storm hitting one region. This was a single massive system that stretched across 17 states and touched millions of people, from the Pacific coast to the northern plains, from ski towns in the mountains to farming communities on the prairie, from cities with thousands of residents to valleys where a few hundred people lived miles apart. And while highways were closing and power lines were coming down, and families were stocking up on firewood and food, while all of that was happening across 17 states, something far worse was building on a mountain in California. a slope that had been loaded with more snow than it could hold, a group of 15 people who had gone into the backcountry to ski, and a slope that was about to give way, setting off the deadliest avalanche this country had seen in decades. But as bad as all of this was, the buried highways, the knocked-out power, the towns cut off from the rest of the world, there was one place where this storm did something far worse than close a road or knock down a tree. And that place was a mountain most people have never heard of. A mountain where, on a single morning, this storm took more lives than any avalanche in this country has taken in 45 years. Castle Peak sits in the Sierra Nevada, not far from Donner Summit. It is not a resort mountain. There are no ski lifts, no groomed runs, no patrol teams watching the slopes. It is backcountry, the kind of place where people who know the mountains go to ski terrain that cannot be reached any other way. The kind of place where you carry your own gear, make your own decisions, and take your own risks. And on a Tuesday morning, while this storm was still tearing through the region, 15 people set out to ski that mountain. They were not beginners. This was a guided group, led by professional mountain guides, people who had spent years in the backcountry, who knew how to read snow conditions, who understood the risks. Among the group were experienced skiers who had done this kind of thing dozens of times before. They checked the avalanche warnings. They knew the storm had loaded the mountain with fresh snow. They made the decision to go anyway. And we should note, whether the group reviewed that morning's updated warning before setting out has not been officially confirmed. What is confirmed is that a high danger warning was active at the time they departed. The slope above the group gave way, and the avalanche buried them in seconds. The avalanche hit without warning. One moment the group was moving across the slope. The next, the snow beneath them fractured and the entire hillside began to move. A massive wall of snow broke loose and came down the slope, burying the group within seconds. Some of them were carried hundreds of feet down the slope. Some of them were buried so deep that rescuers had to dig for hours to reach them, and some of them never had a chance. 6 people survived. They were dug out of the snow by rescue teams who hiked into the backcountry in the middle of a blizzard, because the storm that caused the avalanche had not stopped. The wind was still howling. The snow was still falling. Visibility was so low that rescuers had to navigate by GPS and memory. And they kept digging, for hours, through conditions that would have sent most people back down the mountain. They kept digging because they knew there were people under that snow who were still alive. 8 people were confirmed dead. 1 person is still missing and is presumed dead. That means 8 confirmed dead and 1 still missing. 9 lives connected to that single morning on that mountain. That makes this the deadliest avalanche in California's recorded history, and the 4th deadliest in United States history overall. According to the National Avalanche Center, 4 professional guides were part of the group. 3 of them were killed, 1 survived. People whose job it was to keep others safe in the backcountry. People who had trained for years to understand snow, to read terrain, to make the calls that keep a group alive, and they died doing the thing they had spent their lives learning how to do. One of the victims was the spouse of a search and rescue team member. That detail was confirmed by local news, and it is one of those facts that hits harder than any headline ever could. One confirmed detail reported by local news is that a member of the search and rescue team learned that their spouse was among the victims. That team member continued working through the full recovery operation. The Nevada County Sheriff confirmed the numbers. Confirmed the identities as families were notified. Confirmed that the search had shifted from rescue to recovery, because after a certain amount of time buried under that much snow, survival is not possible. The teams kept working anyway, not because they expected to find anyone alive, but because those families deserved to bring their loved ones home. The Sierra Avalanche Center had rated the danger high, the second most serious level. In a warning issued the morning of the avalanche, the information was publicly available before the group set out. They said the snowpack was unstable. They said the storm had loaded the slopes too quickly. They said backcountry travel was dangerous and that anyone heading into the mountains should be prepared for extreme avalanche conditions. The warning was there, the information was available. And 15 people went into the backcountry anyway. We want to be careful here. Some early reports gave different numbers. Some early reports listed 9 missing, others listed 10. The confusion was about how many were unaccounted for, not the death toll itself. What we know for certain, confirmed by the Nevada County Sheriff and reported by multiple news outlets who spoke directly to officials on the ground, is this: 8 confirmed dead, 1 still missing and presumed dead, 6 survivors rescued, 15 people total. That is the confirmed count. That is the story. And while rescuers were still on that mountain fighting through blizzard conditions to bring those bodies down, while families were being notified by the sheriff's office that their loved ones had not survived, the storm responsible for all of this had already moved on. To more states, to more people, to highways and towns and communities that were about to experience the same snow, the same wind, the same danger that had just killed 9 people on a mountain in California. This was not a freak accident. This was not bad luck. This was what happens when a storm this powerful loads a mountain with more snow than the ground beneath it can hold. This was a direct result of the conditions the storm had created, and it would not be the last impact felt across the region. And the question now was, who was next? While the world was focused on Castle Peak, while rescuers were digging through snow and families were waiting for news, the storm that caused that avalanche kept moving, and it kept destroying. Across the Sierra Nevada and the Cascade Range, highways that had been closed for safety were now physically impassable. Snow had piled so high that even the plows designed to handle this kind of weather could not break through. Drivers who had ignored the closure warnings and tried to push through anyway found themselves stranded in whiteout conditions with no way forward and no way back. Some of them spent the night in their cars, engines running to keep warm, waiting for help that could not reach them until the storm passed. Interstate highways, roads built to carry thousands of vehicles a day, were shut down completely. Not just one lane, not just a stretch. Entire sections were closed, cutting off access to entire regions. Truckers hauling goods across the country were stuck at rest stops and truck stops, unable to move, watching the snow pile up around their rigs. Families trying to get home from vacations or visits were told to turn around or wait it out in towns they had never planned to stop in. In the small mountain communities, the ones that sit at the end of long winding roads that only connect to one main highway, people were cut off entirely. No way in, no way out. Grocery stores that depend on weekly deliveries ran low on supplies. Gas stations that refill their tanks every few days started rationing fuel. And people who had lived in those towns their entire lives, people who were used to winter, who knew how to prepare, started to realize this storm was different. Power lines came down across multiple states. In some places it was the wind that did it, gusts strong enough to snap poles and pull lines off their mounts. In other places it was the weight of the snow and ice that built up on the lines until they could not hold anymore. Rural areas, where power infrastructure is older and farther apart, lost electricity and did not get it back for days. Families who depend on electric heat had to switch to wood stoves and fireplaces. Families who did not have that option bundled up in layers and waited. Elderly residents in those communities, people who live alone, people who do not have family nearby, became a serious concern. Sheriffs and county emergency services started doing wellness checks, calling neighbours and asking them to knock on doors. When the power goes out and roads are closed, people who are alone and without heat can find themselves in a very dangerous situation. One phone call, one knock on the door, that can be the difference. Avalanche warnings were still active across California, Utah and Colorado even after the Castle Peak tragedy. The snow was still unstable. The slopes were still loaded. The backcountry access gates at ski resorts remained locked. Ski patrols kept throwing explosives onto the mountainsides to trigger controlled slides, trying to bring the snow down in a way they could manage before it came down on its own. And still, every few hours, another natural avalanche would cut loose somewhere in the backcountry. No one underneath this time. But the snowpack across those mountains remained unstable, and smaller natural slides continued to occur in remote areas. In Montana, ranchers lost livestock, animals that could not be brought inside in time, animals that got caught in the open when the storm hit and could not find their way back. Ranchers across the northern plains scrambled to get their livestock inside before conditions got worse. Knowing that animals caught in the open during a storm like this often do not survive, that is not just financial loss, that is heartbreak. Full damage assessments for livestock losses were still being compiled as the storm moved through. Reports from ranching communities described widespread concern, but confirmed loss numbers had not yet been released by state agriculture officials at the time this video was made. Schools across the affected states were closed for days, not because administrators wanted a snow day, but because buses could not run, roads could not be cleared, and even if the kids could get to school, many of the teachers and staff could not. In rural districts where some students live an hour away from the school building, those closures meant families scrambling to figure out childcare, meals, routines. Flights were cancelled out of airports across the West and Midwest. Not just delayed, cancelled. Planes that were supposed to land could not because visibility was too low and runways could not be cleared fast enough. Passengers stuck in terminals for hours, then told to go find a hotel and try again tomorrow. Families trying to get home. Business travellers trying to make meetings. People trying to reach loved ones who were sick or dying. All of them stopped by the same storm. And through all of it, the closed roads, the downed power lines, the stranded drivers, the cancelled flights, the towns cut off from the world, the storm kept moving. It did not slow down. It did not weaken. It continued moving across the northern plains, and states ahead of it were already being warned to prepare. This was not just inconvenience. This was not just a few snow days and some cancelled plans. This was entire communities brought to a standstill. This was infrastructure, roads, power, communication, pushed beyond what it was built to handle. This was people making decisions about whether to risk the drive or stay put, whether to check on the neighbour or assume they were fine, whether to go out for supplies or make do with what was already in the house. And for some people, those decisions meant the difference between getting through the storm safely and ending up stranded, cold, and in danger. The storm had already shown how serious its conditions could become, with deadly results on one California mountain. And now it was moving towards states that do not see storms like this very often. States where people do not always know what to do when the snow piles up faster than it can be moved. States where one mistake, one decision to drive when you should have stayed home, can turn deadly in minutes. And here is what made this storm different from the ones before it. It was not slowing down, it was not losing strength, it was moving. And the states in the east had no idea what was coming toward them. Right now, as you watch this, the storm is still moving. It has already buried the west coast. It has already cost 8 confirmed lives on a mountain in California, with one person still missing and presumed dead. It has already shut down highways and knocked out power and cut off entire communities. And now it is rolling east across the northern plains, and the people in its path are being told to prepare. Montana, South Dakota, and Minnesota are under blizzard warnings. Not winter storm warnings, not snow advisories, blizzard warnings. And if you have never lived through a real blizzard, that word might not mean much to you. So let me tell you what it actually means. It means snow falling so fast and wind blowing so hard that you cannot see more than a few feet in front of your face. It means roads that become invisible. It means getting disoriented in your own driveway because you cannot tell where the ground ends and the sky begins. It means that if your car breaks down or slides off the road, you cannot just get out and walk to the nearest house, because you will not know which direction the nearest house is. And in those conditions, leaving your vehicle on foot significantly increases your risk, because it is easy to lose your sense of direction in low visibility. That is what a blizzard warning means. It means stay inside unless you absolutely have no other choice. And even then, think twice. If you live in Montana, the storm has already hit you. If you live in the northern half of South Dakota or the western half of Minnesota, you're in it right now, or you're about to be. The snow is piling up, the wind is howling, and the National Weather Service is telling people in those areas to avoid travel entirely, not to drive carefully, not to take it slow, to avoid it. Because the roads are not just slippery, they are invisible, and the people who try to drive through it anyway are the ones who end up in ditches, or worse. The storm is expected to keep moving east over the next few days. Weather models, the computer forecasts that meteorologists use to predict where a storm is going and how strong it will be, are showing this system pushing into the upper Midwest, and possibly reaching as far as the Great Lakes. Based on current NOAA forecasts, the storm may push into Wisconsin and Michigan over the coming days, though the exact track and snowfall amounts will depend on how the system evolves. That means people who live in states that know how to handle winter are being told this storm is something different. This storm is something to take seriously. If you live in any of these states, this next part is directly for you. Check your supplies. Make sure you have enough food and water to last a few days without leaving the house. Make sure you have a way to stay warm if the power goes out. Make sure your phone is charged. Make sure your car has a full tank of gas, a blanket, a flashlight, and something to eat in case you get stuck somewhere. These are not extreme measures. These are the things that help keep you safe and comfortable if you get caught in severe weather. And check on your neighbours, especially the ones who live alone, especially the elderly ones, especially the ones who might not have family nearby or might not have the resources to prepare the way you can. One knock on the door, one phone call, that can save a life. And in a storm like this, that is not an exaggeration. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, has been tracking this storm since it first formed off the Pacific coast. They have been updating forecasts every few hours as the storm moves and changes, and what they're saying is this. NOAA's latest updates show the storm maintaining much of its strength as it moves east, though forecasters note that conditions can change as the system crosses different terrain, and that means every state in its path needs to be ready. But here is where the story gets even more complicated. Because while this storm rolls east across the northern part of the country, meteorologists on the other side of the country are watching something else forming just offshore. Something that could hit the east coast this weekend. Says something that forecasters are watching closely for this weekend. Some models show it could bring significant snow to the east coast, while others show it staying offshore. No firm forecast has been issued yet, and while this storm has already proven what it can do, while we have already seen the destruction, the deaths, the communities cut off, the next storm is still a question mark, still developing, still uncertain. But serious enough that people from Washington, D.C. to Boston are being told to pay attention. Serious enough that weather centers are running model after model, trying to figure out exactly where it will go and how bad it will be. So if you live anywhere from the mid-Atlantic up through New England, you need to hear what comes next. Because this is not over. This is not one storm that hit the west and then faded away. And this is one storm still moving across the middle of the country, and a second storm building off the Atlantic coast that could hit millions of people who have not seen a single flake yet this winter. A nor'easter is building off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. If it develops the way some weather models are predicting, it could hit the east coast this weekend, Sunday night into Monday, and bring heavy snow, high winds, and coastal flooding to cities and towns from Washington, D.C. all the way up to Boston. Let me be very clear about something right from the start. This storm is still developing. Different computer models are showing different outcomes. Some of them show a major winter storm that dumps heavy snow across the entire mid-Atlantic and northeast. Others show the storm staying farther offshore and missing the coast entirely. Right now, as of the time this video is being made, nobody knows for certain which scenario is going to happen, and we're going to be straight with you about that. This is not a confirmed forecast. This is a developing situation that meteorologists are watching very closely, and that you should be watching too if you live anywhere in its potential path. So what is a nor'easter? And why is this particular storm being watched so closely? A nor'easter is a powerful coastal storm that forms when cold air from the north collides with warm moist air from the Atlantic Ocean. The storm pulls that cold air down from Canada and pulls that warm moist air up from the ocean, and when those two air masses meet, the storm can strengthen very quickly, sometimes doubling in power within hours. The winds blow in from the northeast, which is where the name comes from, and they can reach speeds that rival hurricanes. The snow, when it falls, does not come down gently. It comes down in sheets, and the coastal areas, the ones right along the water, can see flooding from storm surge even while snow is piling up inland. Nor'easters are not rare. The East Coast sees them almost every winter, but the ones that make headlines, the ones that shut down entire cities and leave millions of people without power, are the ones that develop quickly, stay strong, and park themselves over the coast for hours or even days. And right now, the storm forming offshore is being watched closely because the conditions are similar to past storms that have hit the coast hard. The cities being watched most closely are Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston. Those are the population centers. Those are the places where millions of people live and work and depend on infrastructure that does not handle heavy snow as easily as the systems out west do. A storm that drops a foot of snow in the Sierra Nevada is a Tuesday. A storm that drops a foot of snow in New York City is a state of emergency. Weather models are updated every few hours as new data comes in. Meteorologists look at dozens of different models, some run by the US government, some run by European weather services, some run by private forecasting companies, and they compare them to see where the models agree and where they disagree. Right now, the models agree that a storm is forming. They agree that it is moving toward the coast. But they do not agree on how strong it will be or exactly where it will hit. And that uncertainty is the real story. Some forecasts are calling this a blockbuster storm, the kind that could drop more than a foot of snow in some areas and bring winds strong enough to knock out power across the region. Other forecasts are showing the storm staying farther offshore, brushing the coast but not hitting it directly. And the difference between those two outcomes is enormous. One means a major winter event that shuts down cities and closes schools and grounds flights. The other means a few inches of snow and some wind. Inconvenient but manageable. The problem is that coastal storms are some of the hardest weather events to forecast accurately. They develop quickly. They change track based on tiny differences in ocean temperature, air pressure, and wind patterns. A storm that looks like it will miss the coast can sometimes shift track at the last moment and bring heavy snow to areas that did not expect it. A storm that looks like it is going to slam into the coast can shift offshore and fall apart before it ever makes landfall. Meteorologists are good at what they do, but they are not perfect. And when it comes to nor'easters, even the best forecasters will tell you that the storm can surprise you. So what should you do if you live in the potential path of this storm? The answer is simple. You prepare as if it is coming, and then you watch the forecast closely and adjust as more information comes in. If you live anywhere from Washington, D.C. up through Boston, you should be checking your local National Weather Service office every few hours this weekend. They will have the most accurate, most up-to-date information for your specific area. Do not rely on national news headlines. Do not rely on social media posts. Go directly to the National Weather Service website, find your local office, and read what they are saying. That is the source. That is the information you can trust. And if the forecasts start to firm up and it looks like the storm is going to hit, you need to be ready. That means the same things we talked about earlier for the storm moving across the northern plains: food, water, a way to stay warm if the power goes out, a full tank of gas, a charged phone, supplies in your car in case you get stuck, and a plan for how you're going to handle the next few days if the roads close and the power goes out. The difference between being prepared and being caught off guard is often just a matter of timing. The people who prepare before the storm hits have time to make good decisions. The people who wait until the snow is already falling and the roads are already getting bad are the ones who end up in dangerous situations. So if you live in the potential path of this nor'easter, the window to prepare is right now. And the next section tells you exactly what that preparation looks like. But here is the thing. Even if this nor'easter does not develop into a major storm, even if it stays offshore and misses the coast entirely, the fact that meteorologists are watching it this closely should tell you something. It should tell you that the pattern is there, the ingredients are there. Even if this particular storm stays offshore, the weather pattern that produces coastal storms remains active. Forecasters note that conditions similar to what set up this system can return in the weeks ahead. Because winter is not over. The storm that just hit 17 states in the west is still moving, and the season that produces nor'easters on the east coast is just getting started. So whether this particular storm hits or not, the message is the same. Be ready, be aware, and do not wait until the snow is falling to figure out what you're going to do. You now know what this storm has done. You know what it did to the west coast. You know what it did on a mountain in California. You know where it is right now and where it is going next. And you know about the second storm that could be building off the Atlantic coast. So the question is, what do you do with that information? The answer is not complicated. You prepare, not out of fear, not because you think the worst is guaranteed to happen, but because preparation is the thing that keeps you safe when something does go wrong. And in a storm like this, something can go wrong very quickly. The guidance is general. For instructions specific to your area, always follow your local National Weather Service office and your county or state emergency management authority. They will have the most accurate information for where you actually are. Let me walk you through what that preparation actually looks like, and I am going to tie every single piece of this back to something we have already talked about in this video, because each of these tips is tied directly to something that happened in this storm, which is what makes them worth paying attention to. These are the lessons that come from real people who have lived through real storms, and from the people who did not make it through. Remember what happened on Castle Peak? Remember the 15 people who went into the backcountry and the 9 who never came home? One of the things we know about that group is that they checked the avalanche warnings. They knew the conditions were dangerous, and they went anyway. So here is the first lesson. When the warnings say, stay home, stay home. When the authorities say do not travel, do not travel. When the backcountry access gates are locked and the avalanche danger is high, that is not a suggestion. That is not the government being overly cautious. That is people who know what they're doing telling you that the risk is real. You do not have to be in the mountains for that lesson to matter. If you live in one of the states where blizzard warnings are active right now, the same rule applies. When the National Weather Service says avoid travel, they mean it. They are not saying that to inconvenience you. They are saying it because people can get into serious trouble during blizzards, even experienced, careful drivers, because conditions can change faster than anyone expects, and a road that was passable minutes ago can become invisible very quickly. So if you do not absolutely have to be out there, stay inside. If you must travel, let someone know your route and when you expect to arrive so they can check in if they do not hear from you. Now, let me talk about your car. Remember the drivers who got stranded on the Sierra Nevada highways in whiteout conditions? The ones who had no choice but to pull over and wait for hours, sometimes all night, for help to arrive. Those people survived because they had a few basic things in their vehicles: a blanket, a flashlight, some food, a full tank of gas so they could keep the engine running and the heat on. If they had not had those things, the outcome could have been very different. So if you live in any of the states that are in this storm's path, or if you are going to be driving through any of those states in the next few days, here is what you need in your car: a blanket or a sleeping bag, a flashlight with extra batteries, a phone charger that works even if the car is off, water, snacks that do not need to be heated, granola bars, nuts, dried fruit, a small shovel in case you need to dig yourself out of a drift, a bag of sand or cat litter to put under your tyres if you get stuck on ice, and a full tank of gas. Do not wait until you're down to a quarter tank to fill up. Do it now, because if you get stuck, that gas is the only thing keeping you warm. And here is one more thing about your car that most people do not think about until it is too late. If you get stuck in a blizzard and you're waiting for help, do not leave your vehicle. I know that sounds obvious. But when you have been sitting in your car for an hour and you cannot see anything and you start to panic, the instinct is to get out and try to find help. Do not do it. You will get disoriented in seconds. You will not be able to see where you came from or where you're going. In those conditions, staying in your vehicle is the safest choice because it keeps you sheltered and visible to rescuers. The safest choice is to stay in your car and wait for help. Run the engine for heat, but crack a window to make sure you have ventilation in case snow blocks your exhaust pipe, and wait for help to come to you. Now let me talk about your home. Remember the communities that lost power during this storm? The rural areas where families went days without electricity? The elderly residents who lived alone and had no way to stay warm? Those situations are dangerous, and they are preventable. If you live in an area where this storm is expected to hit, check your supplies now. Make sure you have enough food to last at least 3 days without going to the store. Make sure you have water, either bottled or stored in clean containers. If you lose power, your electric stove will not work and your microwave will not work. So make sure you have food that does not need to be cooked, or that can be heated on a camp stove or over a fireplace. Canned soup, pasta, peanut butter, bread, things that are simple but filling. Make sure you have a way to stay warm if the power goes out. If you have a fireplace or a wood stove, make sure you have firewood stocked and ready. If you do not, make sure you have extra blankets and warm clothes. Layer up. Wear a hat indoors if you have to. It sounds silly, but your body loses a huge amount of heat through your head, and keeping it covered makes a real difference. Charge your phone. Charge your laptop. Charge any battery packs you have. If the power goes out, those devices are your connection to the outside world. They are how you call for help. They are how you check weather updates. They are how you let your family know you are okay. Do not wait until the storm hits to charge them. Do it now. And if you take medication, if you have prescriptions that you need to take every day, make sure you have enough to last at least a week. Do not assume you will be able to get to the pharmacy if the roads are closed. Do not assume the pharmacy will be open if the power is out. Call ahead, refill early, make sure you have what you need before the storm arrives. Now here is the part that a lot of people forget. Check on your neighbours, especially the ones who live alone, especially the ones who are older, or who have health issues, or who might not have the resources to prepare the way you can. Knock on their door before the storm hits. Ask if they need anything. Ask if they have enough food, enough medication, a way to stay warm, and then check on them again after the storm passes. Because sometimes the most dangerous part of a winter storm is not the storm itself. It is the isolation that comes after. The power that stays out for days, the roads that stay closed, the people who are cut off and alone and who do not have anyone checking to make sure they are okay. You do not need to be a survival expert for this. You do not need to be a trained emergency responder. You just need to think one step ahead. You just need to ask yourself, what would I need if I could not leave my house for 3 days? What would I need if the power went out? What would I need if I got stuck in my car? And then you make sure you have those things before the storm hits. And here is the last thing. If you live on the East Coast and you're watching the nor'easter forecast develop, do not wait until Sunday to prepare. Do it now, because if that storm does hit, everyone else is going to be at the grocery store and the gas station and the hardware store at the same time. The shelves will be empty, the lines will be long, and you will be scrambling to get the things you should have gotten days ago. So take an hour right now, make a list, go to the store, fill up your gas tank, charge your devices, and then you can watch the forecast without panicking. Because you will know that no matter what happens, you are ready. Preparing for a storm is not about expecting the worst. It is about making sure you have what you need if things do not go as planned. It is about making sure that when something goes wrong, you have the tools and the knowledge to handle it. And in a storm like this, that can be the difference between getting through it safely and ending up in a situation that you cannot get out of. You now know what hit, who it hurt, what it destroyed, and how to stay safe. But there is one last thing worth understanding, because this storm is being called something we have not heard in years. This storm has done something that most people do not realize. It has brought destruction and renewal at the same time, and that contrast is worth understanding, because it adds important context to what this storm actually means beyond the immediate damage. California had been dangerously low on snowpack after an unusually dry and warm January. The snowpack in the Sierra Nevada is not just about skiing, it is about water. Millions of people across California depend on that snow to melt slowly through the spring and summer, feeding rivers and reservoirs and irrigation systems that keep farms running and cities supplied with drinking water. When the snowpack is low, the state faces drought. When the snowpack is high, the state has enough water to make it through the dry season. This storm brought a significant boost to the Sierra Nevada snowpack, which had dropped roughly 20% below average during a dry January. Water officials said early snowfall measurements showed meaningful improvement in some areas, though full recovery depends on continued storms through the season. The same snow that buried highways and triggered avalanches and cut off communities is the same snow that will melt in a few months and fill reservoirs and keep farms alive. The storm that took 8 lives on a mountain is the same storm that may help California avoid another dry summer of water shortages. That does not make the loss any less painful. It does not bring those 9 people back. But it is a reminder that nature does not operate in simple categories. A storm can be both a disaster and a blessing. Snow can be both dangerous and life-giving. And the same weather event that destroys in the short term can sustain in the long term. The families of those lost at Castle Peak are living through something unimaginable. They woke up one morning expecting their loved ones to come home from a day in the backcountry, and instead they got a phone call, or a knock on the door, or a news report that confirmed what they had been dreading. Those families will carry that loss for the rest of their lives. And while the rest of us move on, while the snow melts and the roads reopen and the next storm becomes the story everyone is talking about, those families will still be grieving. We do not say that to be morbid. We say it because it matters. Because the numbers, 8 confirmed dead, 1 missing, are not just numbers. They were members of their communities, family members, co-workers, and friends, whose loss is being felt deeply by the people who knew them long after the news coverage has moved on. So if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. Winter storms are not abstractions. They are not just headlines or weather maps or things that happen to other people in other places. They are real events that kill real people. And the decisions you make, whether to check the avalanche warnings before you head into the backcountry, whether to drive through a blizzard when you could stay home, whether to stock up on supplies before the storm hits or wait until it is too late, those decisions matter. Good preparation gives you more options when conditions get difficult, and it can make a real difference for the people around you too. The storm is still moving. It has already crossed 17 states. It has already killed 9 people. It has already shut down highways and knocked out power and buried entire communities. And it is not done yet. More states are in its path. More people are being told to prepare. And on the other side of the country, a second storm is building that could turn this into a coast-to-coast weather event. But now you know the full story. Or you know what happened on that mountain. You know what this storm has already done and what it is still doing. You know where it is going and who is in its path. You know about the nor'easter forming off the Atlantic coast, and you know what to do if any of this is heading your way. You know what is real, you know what matters, and you know how to stay safe. If this storm has reached your area, or if someone you love is in its path, drop a comment below and let us know where you are watching from. We read every single one. And if this video helped you understand what is really happening out there, if it gave you information you needed or answered questions you had, hit that subscribe button. Because we are tracking this storm as it moves east. We are watching the nor'easter as it develops. And we will have the update the moment the forecast firms up. The storm is still moving. The questions are not all answered yet, but now you know what is real, what matters, and what to do about it. Stay safe out there. Check on your neighbours. Prepare before you need to. And remember, winter storms are a normal part of life in many parts of the country. The key is knowing what to do before one arrives.